Let me ask you something that might shake you. What if I told you that an avoidant, the one who runs, shuts down, detaches, could become obsessed with you, not by playing games, not by begging for love, but by triggering something so deep inside them that their walls collapse and they can't stop thinking about you? You don't need to chase love. You need to understand the psychology behind it. Today, I'm giving you 5 psychological triggers that flip the avoidance mind and make you unforgettable. Avoidants are allergic to emotional overwhelm, but they are addicted to emotional mystery. And this is where most people get it wrong. When you like someone with an avoidant attachment style, your first instinct might be to give more, to open up faster, to make yourself emotionally available in the hopes that they'll finally feel safe enough to stay. But that's not how their nervous system works. They don't trust what comes too easy, and they don't value what's immediately available. They're wired to pull away from emotional intensity, but they're also wired to be intrigued by what feels just out of reach. When you're an open book, oversharing your feelings, your needs, your pain, your desire for connection, you're unknowingly flooding them. What might feel like intimacy to you actually registers as pressure to them. The key is to remain connected while leaving space for curiosity. Curiosity is the spark that makes someone think about you when you're not there, and that spark is oxygen for the avoidance attraction. Being emotionally mysterious isn't about playing hard to get. It's about regulating your emotional output and understanding your value. It's knowing that the more someone has to lean in to get to know you, the more emotionally engaged they become. You don't need to withhold who you are. You simply need to filter what you share and when you share it. Instead of pouring your heart out after the second date, drop glimpses of your world like puzzle pieces, one at a time. Instead of chasing validation through constant communication, let silence be part of your rhythm. The avoidant brain needs space to feel, and it processes emotions slowly. When you give that space and remain calmly mysterious, you trigger a psychological loop, the Zeigarnik effect. It's the brain's tendency to remember unfinished business, and you become the unfinished business. When you stop trying to be fully understood and start showing up as someone worth discovering slowly, steadily, authentically, you flip the avoidant's usual script. They're no longer retreating from pressure. They're drawn toward depth. But this depth isn't loud or dramatic. It's subtle, it's quiet, and it's powerful. It's the kind of mystery that invites emotional engagement without overwhelming their system. The result, they begin to crave your presence because they don't fully have you, and that mystery becomes magnetic. The moment you stop attaching your identity to someone's ability to stay, you become powerful. Avoidants are highly sensitive to emotional dependency. The more they sense that you need them to feel okay, the more their walls go up. They're not trying to hurt you. Their nervous system is simply wired to equate closeness with loss of autonomy. So when you're always available, always checking in, always seeking reassurance, it doesn't make them feel loved, it makes them feel trapped. And their natural reaction is to pull away. But when you become emotionally detached, not cold, not cruel, but internally independent, everything begins to shift. Emotional detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. It means your peace is no longer on sale. You're not trying to win someone's love by sacrificing your dignity. You're holding your value, and that changes the dynamic entirely. Most people confuse attachment with love. They think if I stay close enough, if I show them I won't leave, they'll finally open up. But that's not how it works with avoidance. They don't feel safe with emotional proximity. They feel safe with emotional space. And when you step back, when you stop reaching and allow the silence to speak, you activate something powerful in them, the fear of true loss, not the fear of suffocation. They already know how to handle that. They just shut down, but the fear of losing someone who wasn't clinging, someone who knew how to walk away with grace, that is what breaks through. You don't walk away with bitterness, you walk away with energy still intact. You let your silence carry the message, I care, but I don't chase. And suddenly, they have to confront the consequences of their distance. No more emotional cushions. No more guaranteed second chances. Just the echo of your absence and the realization that they actually want your presence. There is a quiet kind of strength in detachment. The kind that doesn't scream, doesn't beg, doesn't demand anything. It simply honors itself, and to the avoidant, that kind of strength is irresistible, it's unfamiliar, it's rare, it makes them pause, it makes them think, and most of all it makes them feel, not because you tried to force connection, but because you let go of needing it. That's when the game changes. That's when they start chasing what they thought they could live without. There is a fundamental shift that happens the moment you stop trying to earn someone's affection and start living like you are the reward. Most people in connection with an avoidant lose this power without even realizing it. They begin to tiptoe, to please, to edit themselves in the hope that it will make the avoidant feel safe enough to stay. But here's the truth. The more you try to become what someone else wants, the more you disconnect from your own magnetism, and avoidants are not pulled in by people who orbit around them. They are pulled in by people who orbit around themselves. Being self-possessed doesn't mean you're arrogant. It means you're grounded. It means you have a deep, unshakable awareness of your worth that doesn't rise and fall based on how someone treats you. When you radiate that kind of certainty, when your tone, your energy, your decisions reflect, "I am enough as I am," something powerful happens. You disrupt the avoidance emotional pattern. They're used to people overgiving. They're used to people tolerating emotional starvation. But when they meet someone who isn't looking for permission to feel valuable, someone who already knows they are, they feel both confused and intrigued. Self-possession flips the energy. Instead of them feeling like they're in control, you are. Not by manipulation, but by self-respect. You're not performing to keep them. You're being fully, and you allow them to meet you not beneath you, not above you, but beside you. You're not trying to pull them in with effort. You're pulling them in with presence. Here's what most people forget. You teach others how to value you by the way you value yourself. When you start living like you are the prize, you don't tolerate hot and cold behavior. You don't beg for consistency. You don't settle for confusion. Your energy says, "This is what it looks like to love me, and if you can't, that's okay. I won't fight to convince you." And ironically, that's exactly what gets the avoidant to take notice. They're not obsessed with what they can have too easily. They become obsessed with the person who doesn't abandon themselves in order to be chosen. When you're the prize, you don't chase validation. You simply exist in your value, and that becomes the gravitational pull they didn't know they needed. When most people hear the word vulnerability, they immediately associate it with full exposure, pouring your heart out, expressing every emotion, letting someone see all the broken pieces. But for an avoidant, that kind of vulnerability doesn't feel safe. It feels overwhelming. It feels like pressure. It triggers the very thing they fear the most, emotional enmeshment. You see, avoidants don't reject vulnerability because they're heartless. They reject it because they were never taught how to sit with emotional depth without drowning in it. So the key is not to withhold your truth, it's to deliver it in a way that's grounded, self-owned, and emotionally contained. That's what I call controlled vulnerability. It's the art of revealing your emotional truth without flooding the other person with it. Instead of bleeding all over the conversation, you share from a place of strength. You're not asking to be saved, you're allowing yourself to be seen. Imagine the difference between saying, "I feel like you're pulling away, and it's making me panic," versus, "I've noticed some distance, and I value connection, so I wanted to check in." Both statements reveal emotion. But one is heavy, anxious, and rooted in fear, while the other is calm, present, and rooted in self-awareness. That's the difference. The avoidant doesn't run from feelings, they run from emotional weight they don't know how to carry. Controlled vulnerability speaks a different language. It says, "I can hold myself even when I'm being honest with you." That kind of emotional leadership is powerful. It disarms the avoidant because it doesn't come with demands or desperation. It creates an emotional pocket where they can actually breathe and reflect, not react or shut down. The truth is, most people try to use vulnerability as a shortcut to intimacy, but with avoidance, that shortcut becomes a roadblock. You don't need to spill everything at once. You just need to drop small pieces of truth with clarity, calmness, and confidence. When you do that, you begin to model a version of intimacy that doesn't scare them, it draws them in. And here's the magic. When you share your truth without expecting a certain reaction, when you express without attachment to outcome, you embody emotional safety. And emotional safety is the very thing that creates obsession in someone who has never known what safe connection feels like. One of the deepest mistakes people make with avoidance is thinking that love means tolerance. That if they just hang in there, remain patient, keep proving their loyalty, eventually the avoidant will feel safe enough to let them in. But what actually happens is the opposite. The more you lower your standards to accommodate their emotional unavailability, the less respect and attraction they feel, because deep down, even avoidants know when they're not showing up fully. And they watch how you respond to that. Boundaries are not walls. They are doors with locks, and you hold the key. When you start saying no, without guilt, without anger, without needing to justify yourself, you send a powerful psychological signal. I am not available for emotional breadcrumbs. This is where attraction deepens. Because contrary to what most people believe, avoidants don't obsess over people who give them everything. They obsess over people who don't abandon their self-worth, no matter how strong the emotional connection is. When you calmly express your boundaries not with drama, but with clarity, you give the avoidant something they're not used to, structure. You show them that your love is not unconditional if it comes at the cost of your emotional safety. And that changes everything. You're no longer someone they can string along. You're someone who mirrors their behavior back to them and forces them to self-reflect. That reflection is often the first time they have to look in the mirror and ask, why do I keep pushing away the very thing I crave? It doesn't take anger to set a boundary. In fact, the most powerful boundaries are set with peace. You're not trying to punish them. You're not trying to control the outcome. You're simply stating, this is what I need to feel safe and respected, and if that's not possible, I'm okay letting go. That level of emotional maturity is magnetic. Avoidants test limits often unconsciously. They want to know, will you tolerate my distance? Will you abandon yourself to keep me? And when you don't, when you hold firm in your standards, when you maintain self-respect even in the face of connection, it pierces through their defenses. Because suddenly, you're not someone who's begging to be chosen. You're someone who already chose yourself, and that creates an energy they can't ignore. Most people spend so much energy trying to become someone another person won't leave that they slowly abandon the very thing that made them attractive in the first place, their individuality. When you're around an avoidant, this can become even more intense. You may feel like you have to shrink your dreams, dim your light, or rearrange your life just to keep them engaged. But the truth is, the moment your world starts to revolve around them, the gravitational pull breaks. You lose yourself trying to hold on to someone who's already halfway out the door, not because they don't care, but because they're wired to retreat when someone else's focus becomes too fixed on them. Avoidants are not attracted to people who chase them. They are drawn to people who are deeply rooted in something bigger than the relationship. Purpose is magnetic. It creates a sense of movement, momentum, depth, a life that doesn't collapse just because someone is inconsistent. And when you're lit up from within by your own goals, passions, or mission, you become a mystery to them. You're no longer just emotionally invested, you're energized by something that doesn't depend on their behavior. That's when obsession begins to brew. Why? Because avoidants are used to being the center of someone's emotional universe. They're used to people who wait for them, worry about them, and wrap their worth around the connection. But when you don't do that when you show them that you are already full, and that love is just a bonus, not your lifeline, they're forced to ask a question they don't usually face. Why aren't they chasing me? Why aren't they trying harder to keep me close? And the answer is simple. You're already in motion. You're not standing still, waiting for them to catch up. You're building something in your career, in your healing, in your creativity, in your personal evolution. Your life has rhythm, direction, and meaning, and that makes you unforgettable. Avoidants don't want someone who needs them to feel complete. They want someone who makes them want to grow, someone who doesn't lose themselves in love, but who brings more of themselves because of it. When your purpose speaks louder than your pain, they hear it. When you're no longer trying to pull them in because you're already pulled by your own mission, that's when they lean in. Not because they feel needed, but because they feel inspired. One of the most powerful psychological triggers that affects an avoidant, though it's rarely talked about, is the absence of your energy, not your silence in anger, not your withdrawal in punishment, but the true absence of that emotional, mental, and energetic presence they once took for granted. Avoidants often assume you'll always be there, always waiting, always emotionally available, no matter how distant or inconsistent they become. They build a silent comfort in knowing that your energy is orbiting them, even when they aren't fully engaging with it. But the moment that energy disappears, not with force, not with bitterness, but with peace, they feel it like a shockwave. There is something deeply unsettling, yet irresistible, about a person who can remove their attention without drama, not because they're trying to teach a lesson, but because they've learned their own. Your energy is a currency, and when you stop spending it on someone who doesn't reciprocate, you reclaim your value. For an avoidant, that shift is louder than words. They may not say anything. They may not even act on it immediately. But they feel it, and in that quiet absence, their mind starts filling in the gaps. Why aren't they texting me anymore? Why don't they care? Have they moved on? That mental loop becomes obsession. It's not about playing games. It's about stepping back so that they finally confront the impact of your absence. You've given them your attention, your care, your presence, and they didn't know how to hold it. Now you're holding it for yourself. And that's when they begin to truly see you, not as someone who needs them, but as someone who is fully capable of disappearing from their emotional field if they don't meet you with the same level of depth. Avoidants crave control, but what they don't expect is for you to have control of your own energy. That control is powerful. It means you don't overextend, you don't explain yourself endlessly, you don't beg for closure. You exit with dignity, and your silence becomes your statement. That stillness creates tension, and that tension creates curiosity. They start wondering not just where you went, but who you are when they're no longer the center of your attention. And that curiosity, that inner disruption, that is what pulls them back in. Your greatest leverage is not proving your worth, it's protecting it. When your energy disappears without warning, they'll feel it. And for the first time, they'll realize what your presence truly meant. If you've ever felt powerless in the presence of an avoidant, if you've questioned your worth, replayed every text, blamed yourself for their distance, it's time to rewrite that story. Their behavior doesn't define your value. Their inability to stay close isn't a reflection of your lovability. It's a reflection of their inner wiring, their emotional wounds, their subconscious fear of intimacy. And once you understand that, once you stop internalizing their pullbacks as personal rejections, you take back your emotional power. You stop reacting, you stop chasing, and you start responding from a place of quiet strength. You don't make an avoidant obsessed by begging them to love you. You do it by becoming someone who knows exactly who they are with or without them. You awaken their desire by becoming unpredictable in all the right ways, mysterious without being distant, emotionally present without being overwhelming, vulnerable without being needy. You trigger their obsession not with force, but with emotional intelligence. By showing them that you are willing to walk away rather than betray yourself, you become someone they can't categorize, someone they can't control, and someone they can't forget. Every psychological trigger we explored, from emotional mystery to calm detachment, to grounded self. Worth, strong boundaries, and the power of your absence points to one central truth. Your energy is valuable. When you finally stop giving it away freely and start directing it inward into your purpose, your healing, your alignment, people feel that, especially avoidants, because the one thing they can't resist is someone who doesn't try to convince them. Someone who becomes so deeply self-led, so grounded in their standards, that they feel the shift in their gut. That's not arrogance. That's emotional mastery. That's the kind of energy that lingers in their mind long after you've stopped reaching out. So don't shrink yourself to be loved. Don't perform to be picked. Don't dilute your essence to make someone feel safe. Instead, rise. Stand in the wholeness of who you are. Become the kind of person who doesn't chase connection, you command it by how you carry yourself. And when you do, even the most emotionally avoidant will feel it, not because you tried harder, but because you finally became the one thing they didn't expect. Someone they couldn't ignore, couldn't replace, and couldn't stop thinking about. That's real power, and it's already inside you. If this message spoke to your heart, if it opened your eyes or gave you a sense of power you forgot you had, don't keep it to yourself. Like, comment, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe and turn on the bell icon so you never miss the tools, truths, and deep emotional insights that can completely transform your relationships and your self-worth. I read every comment. Let me know below which trigger resonated with you the most. Your story could help someone else feel less alone. Until next time, stay grounded, stay powerful, and remember, you don't chase love, you attract it by becoming the most aligned, self-respecting version of yourself. Goodbye for now, and I'll see you in the next video.